A motivated person is generally thought of as someone who has goals and who has objectives and is trying to get someplace else and has sort of an inner vision of where they would like to be, and they work hard and they get up early and they leave a little bit late and they have all kinds of good work habits and so on, and they're said to be highly motivated. And that's not inspiration. That's motivation is you get a hold of an idea and you take it with you and you carry it through to its logical conclusion. That's a motivated person. Inspiration is not where you get a hold of an idea and take it where you want it to go. It's where an idea gets a hold of you, and it takes you where you were intended to go in the first place. You know you remember Arthur Miller? He died about a year ago, the great playwright. You know, most of us had to read The Death of a Salesman or The Crucible. Well, he was 88 years old, and he was interviewed in the New York Times, and they asked him a question. Now, he had a play on Broadway at 88, and they asked him a question. They said, "Are you working on another play?" And here was this man who was soon to be 90, who said, "I don't know." He said, "But I probably am." And I think it was one of the great inspirational moments in my life reading that, and it was really one of the things that motivated me to write a book about inspiration from this perspective, that there are things that get a hold of you. Now, Mozart was described this way, that he would have what he called lively dreams, and he said that these symphonies would present themselves to him, and it was almost as if they were already written, and he would have to get them out and record them, and so on. Now, you probably have experienced this. Most creative people who've done a lot of particularly creative work understand this. Rumi, the great Persian poet, said, he said, "The morning breeze has secrets to tell you. Do not go back to sleep. Do not go back to sleep." And what he was saying there was that when you are closest to God, between 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, which is the best time for almost all of us, and almost everyone listening will awaken at one time or another between the hours of 3 and 4 and then go right back to sleep. But if you could understand that that's a wake-up call for you to be able to do what it is that you were designated to do, what you signed up to do, what your spirit is telling you to do, because inspiration is just about being in spirit. And when I get up when I'm writing, I get up between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, and I go out. I live on Maui, and I go out onto my writing space out there. And thank you, by the way, all of you, for my place on Maui. I really appreciate it. It's a wonderful place, and I appreciate you getting it for me. I mean that. I say that, but I mean I'm always in a state of gratitude for all of the people who have supported the work that I have done. And at any rate, so I go out there and I sit down, and there are times, I don't know if you've had this experience, Mark, but I sit down and I write everything by hand, everything, and I just allow it to flow through me. I allow it to flow through. I take a purple pen, which is the highest energy of the rainbow, and I allow it to come to me. And there are times when I sit there at 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I allow this information to come through my heart and onto the page, and I sit there and I wonder what's coming next. And oftentimes I'll read it, I'll think, I didn't even know I knew that. And then if I get stuck on something, or if I'm just not quite sure about something, I'll just reach over, and sure enough, there will be in a book that I've just grabbed off of the shelf or that's laying there. I'll just pick it up and open it up, and exactly what I needed will be in there. It's like when Patanjali said, dormant forces come alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. What happens is that when you get yourself into that spirit and you allow it to flow through you and to work with you and to work for you and support you, it's taking you where you were destined to go.
And what I'd like to do now is share with you what I think of as the essence of getting out of our personal history. You know, Alan Watts described it like this. He said, your life is like a boat, and it's heading up the river at 40 knots. And you're standing on the stern of the boat, looking down as the boat's heading in this direction, and you're looking at the water, and what you see before you is a wake. And he said, you have to ask yourself these 3 questions about the wake. The first question, what is the wake? And the wake that you're observing is just a trail that is left behind. That's what it is. It's just a trail that is left behind, if you can see that metaphor. And that's your life. And everything that's ever happened to you up until this moment, it's a wake. And the second thing is, what's driving the boat? That's the second question. That is, what's making your life go in this direction? And the answer to what's driving the boat is the present moment energy that's being generated by the engine. And nothing more. That's the only thing that makes the boat go. Now here's the most important question to ask yourself. Is it possible for the wake to drive the boat? That is, can a trail that is left behind make a boat go in this direction? And of course the answer to that is, it's impossible. Can't happen. And most of us, including those of us who are stuck in disease, are believing that the wake is what's causing me to be sick today, or causing this relationship to not work. And this woman whose husband had left her and who had to raise these children and had lived with all of these thoughts of how this shouldn't have happened and what a bastard he was and how wrong that was and so on, was living back here in the wake, believing that all of this stuff that was back here was causing her to be depressed, to be sick, to be unhappy, to be all of the things that she was, when in fact it's just the way that she was processing that. It's the present moment energy that is generated by our thoughts that creates what it is that we are experiencing now. And if you can get out of the wake, or if you can teach your patients to get out of the wake, how many patients had come to you and told you that I've had back trouble my whole life? It runs in our family. My grandfather had it, my great-grandfather had it, my grandmother, of course I'm going to have it. And they're all in the wake. And they're all anticipating and expecting, and they're literally living this stuff that's back here, when in fact, they have a whole new set of options available to them if you can move into the present moment, if you can move into the now, and redirect the energy that you have into this moment. This is the place where you have an awareness within you that says, I don't go back there any longer. What you think of me is none of my business. I am free from allowing myself to become immobilized or upset or in any way incapacitated on the basis of what is going on outside of me or how other people conduct themselves. I am in charge of my emotional life. I live at bliss.
My feelings come from my thoughts. My emotions, my angers, my hatreds, my love, my positive emotions, my negative emotions are all preceded by thoughts. They're the result of thoughts. They're the physiological reactions to thoughts. And emotions, which are very vital and very important to each one of us, can in fact be controlled by our thoughts in positive ways. I'm not an anti-emotion person. I'm not someone who believes that you shouldn't be emotional. I'm saying your emotions should never be immobilizing. They should never be defended as something that you use to keep yourself from being all that you can be, or explaining it all away because I'm just this kind of person. I've always been this way. I can't help it. That's my nature. That's the kind of person I am. You are the kind of person you have chosen to be as a result of how you use what you are, the pureness of your thought. We're learning through biochemical exploration and engineering. There are enzymes in the brain that release different endorphins into your brain as a result of the way that you think. A person who thinks a positive thought is not just saying, oh goody, I'm just thinking positive thoughts. They are affecting the chemistry of their body. And when you look at things like schizophrenia and some of the least understood of the mental illnesses, we say, yes, there's chemical imbalances there. And the scientists all get together and say, yeah, it's chemistry. What are you talking about all this thinking stuff? If we can alter the chemistry, we can alter the disease. Of course, it's true. I buy it 100%, but it's only 50% of the battle. What causes the chemistry to change in a human being? What causes an ulcer? Isn't that a chemical change brought about as a result of thinking? Isn't that what it is? Well, the same thing is true of a mental illness. Yes, the chemistry is different, but believe that you control your chemistry. It's your chemistry. You carry it around. It's yours. And every patient who I've ever worked with in the really severely disturbed realm still must understand that they're doing this to themselves. Yes, your chemistry is unbalanced, but don't believe that we're just going to put you on lithium, we're just going to put you on this drug, and the drug is going to, for the rest of your life, do it. You've got to believe that you can, in fact, alter any chemistry within you through the way that you think. What do you think blood pressure going up when you're under pressure is about? It's a chemical change brought about through thought.
Henry David Thoreau was Harvard educated, but chose the unpopular career of writer and poet to satisfy his soul's urge. A force in the New England Transcendentalists, along with Emerson, he loved nature, freedom, and individuality. Listen to this passage from Walden. If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured and far away. The one comment that I am most pleased to hear from those who have read my books or listened to my tapes over the years goes like this. Your words finally reassured me that I am not insane. All my life people have been telling me there's something wrong with me for the way I think. Your words made me realize that I'm not crazy. I think that it was in reading Thoreau that I had the very same kind of epiphany. I have often imagined myself in the shoes of Thoreau, living simply and deliberately in the woods, being self-sufficient and writing down what I felt most deeply in my soul. But more than writing it down, the idea of living these ideas, regardless of how others perceived me or reacted, seemed somehow noble. Within each of us there is a voice that whispers, take the risks, pursue your dreams, live life to the fullest. As long as you're not hurting anyone else, why not? Then outside of us there are voices that scream, don't be a fool, you're going to fail. Be just like everyone else. If you do what you want, you're being selfish and you're hurting others. These loud, incessant dictates of our companions urge us to keep up with them and threaten to ostracize us when we fail to do so. I have observed that society in general always seems to honor its living conformists and its dead troublemakers. Everyone who has ever made a difference in any profession has listened to the music he or she hears and proceeded independent of the opinion of others. In doing so, they are labeled troublemakers, incorrigibles, even misfits. Yet they become highly respectable after death. This includes Henry David Thoreau, who was vilified for his position in his essay on the necessity of civil disobedience, and jailed for refusing to obey what he considered absurd rulings. Yet today he is required reading in virtually all high schools and universities. The beat that you hear within yourself is your connection to your soul's purpose. It will continue to plague you when you ignore it or suppress it in an attempt to conform with society. Those who implore you to march to the beat they hear are often well-intentioned and coming from a position of love for you. They'll tell you, I only have your very best interest in mind, and I am the voice of experience. You'll be sorry if you don't follow my advice. You listen and you try so hard to be just like everybody wants you to be. Yet that nagging drum beat that no one else seems to hear faintly thumps in the farthest reaches of your awareness. If you continue to ignore it, you will live a life of frustration. You may even learn to suffer in comfort, which is the very best you'll be able to achieve. Thoreau is speaking directly to you from the mid-19th century about your own self-sufficiency and happiness. Whatever it is that you feel compelled to be or do is the voice of your soul pleading with you to have the courage to listen and act upon the melody only you hear, as long as it does not interfere with anyone else's right to pursue their dreams. And so it is with those around you who are also hearing a drumbeat that is foreign to you. They too must be allowed to step to the music they hear, even though it may sound strident and off-key to you. If everyone marched to the very same music and no one ever strayed from that conformity, we would all still be living in caves and preparing the same old recipe. Take one whole buffalo, skin it, burn it, and devour it. Progress is the result of individuals first listening to what their hearts tell them, and then acting on those messages despite the protestations of the tribe. Imagine yourself walking through the woods with Mr. Thoreau back in the 1840s before the Civil War. His observations were based not on some philosophy he had read or heard, but from his own direct experience of feeling the outrage of conformity and seeing the horrors of how Native Americans were being treated by the white man. He knew that to go along with the popular idea of removing Indians from their lands was our very own Holocaust. And so he left to live in nature and experience self-sufficiency away from the pressures of the larger group. He did not keep step with his companions, and at the time he was criticized for it. Yet time has revealed him to be one of those troublemakers we revere. Walk with Thoreau in your own mind. Listen to the voice you hear and the drumbeat only you can feel, and honor it, while honoring it in those you love as well. It is the ultimate act of unconditional love. While it may not get you any awards while you are alive, you can take comfort in knowing that you fulfilled your own divine purpose and encouraged others to do the same. To put Thoreau's advice into practice, first, refuse to evaluate yourself as sane or insane on the basis of how you fit in with the expectations of those around you. If you feel it and it harms no one, then it is authentic and very sane. Second, remind yourself that you will have to incur the misunderstanding and perhaps even the wrath of those in your immediate tribes for having the temerity to march to your own drumbeat. Don't take it personally, even for one moment. It is merely a strategy to get you to conform, and when you fail to react, the wrath will quickly disappear. Third, allow those in your immediate sphere, family and friends, to have the joy of blissfully marching to their own beat without having to explain or defend their choices. You will be substituting anger and resentment for peace and love, and everyone will enjoy the original music they hear. And one of the people, of course, that was very profoundly important in my life was Jesus of Nazareth. Now, you can look through the New Testament and you can find a million different quotations of Jesus, and I picked one to write this essay about, and it was called About Being Childlike. He said, "Except as ye become converted and become a child, ye shall not enter the kingdom of heaven." Now, what does it mean to be childlike? I have 8 children, and I have watched them as they have come into this world. And they come into this world with personalities. Some of them come in smiling, and some of them in crying. Some sleep all night right away, and some don't sleep all night for 2 years. They all come from this place called nowhere, and they enter this place called now here. So we go from nowhere, N-O-W-H-E-R-E, to now here, N-O-W-H-E-R-E. It's all the same, just a question of spacing. You get into now here, and we're all going back to nowhere. So our life is sort of like a parenthesis in eternity. And what Jesus was speaking about here is to go back to that place where you have this great sense of awe, where you have this great sense of mystery. And more important, you don't have any anger in you towards the world. You don't look at other people and their conduct or the way they appear and say that I don't like them. You have to be carefully taught all of these things. As a child, you are the person who is laughing and full of joy. For me, the most treasured moments of my life, many people say, well, you spent years in foster homes. Wasn't that a great difficulty and a great struggle? I always say, no, it wasn't a great struggle. When you're a child, you don't wake up every day and say, oh my God, I'm an orphan again today. Poor me. Why did this happen to me? This isn't fair. What you do is you get up and you enjoy your life and you get on with it and you do everything that a 6-year-old child will do. And then you turn 40. It seems like it happens overnight. And then all of a sudden things aren't going as well as you thought they should. And you're addicted to this substance or that, or you're overweight, or your business is failing, or you're going through your 3rd marriage, or any number of things that you would say constitute, failures in your life, if you will. And all of a sudden, you start saying to yourself, why did this happen? And you say, well, what do you expect from me? I was an orphan. And you go back and you relive and look into all of these things that when you were a child, you just ignored. You didn't even pay attention to. And now that you become an adult, you've got something to use as an excuse for why your life isn't working the way you would like it to work. When you're childlike, you don't have excuses. You don't blame. You don't find fault. You don't judge. You simply love. And this is what Jesus meant when he said, become a child. Otherwise, you won't enter the kingdom of heaven. Have an absence of judgment, and you'll find yourself fulfilled every moment of your life. Italian painter, sculptor, architect, musician, engineer, mathematician, and scientist, Leonardo da Vinci was one of the greatest intellects in the history of mankind. He had this to say about balance. Every now and then go away. Have a little relaxation, for when you come back to your work, your judgment will be surer, since to remain constantly at work will cause you to lose power of judgment. Go some distance away because the work appears smaller and more of it can be taken in at a glance, and a lack of harmony or proportion is more readily seen. When a man such as Leonardo da Vinci gives advice, I, for one, am willing to listen with fixed attention. It seems to me that highly productive people have a great sense of balance and harmony in their lives. They are thoroughly familiar with pacing and knowing when to retreat and clear their heads of the immediate concerns. The key word here is balance. To avoid being consumed by anything, you must be able to walk away from it. In the process of walking away, you begin to see your work or your family or your project from a perspective that appears smaller, according to Leonardo. The great Renaissance master is telling us to let go, relax, don't try so hard, remove the struggle and allow our natural divine guidance to assist us. He says, have a little relaxation, for when you come back to your work, your judgment will be surer. One way to do this in today's world is to learn to meditate before you undertake any serious pursuit, be it a plan for a business meeting, a job interview, giving a lecture, or painting a portrait. The very act of allowing yourself to go into a meditative state will improve your efficiency enormously. In the past 10 years, I have never gone before an audience without first spending a minimum of an hour, usually more, alone in a state of meditation. What I find in that state, particularly when I emerge from my relaxing meditation, is that I can walk out on the stage or pick up my pen with a sense of confidence that I am connected to a higher part of myself that knows no fear. I become an observer of myself doing the work, and everything seems to flow as if the hand of God is guiding my tongue or my pen. In the process of getting some distance between yourself and your work and relaxing into that space, you are inviting divine intervention into your activity. The less stress you place on yourself to accomplish or complete ironically seems to give you the power to do just that. Balance is what Leonardo da Vinci encouraged us to have in our life, regardless of our pursuits. By all means, get involved in your activities, but try to enjoy them for what they are, rather than the final outcome.
The greatest gift that you've ever been given is the gift of your imagination. Your imagination is yours to be able to do anything you want with. You can place any thought in there with the awareness of I am. There's a very famous poem about that moment of Moses speaking to God. It says, earth's crammed with heaven, and every burning bush afire with God. And those who truly know take off their sandals, while the rest sit round it and pick blackberries. It's your call. It's your call. So your imagination is the greatest gift that you've been given. And you can put anything in there. No one can tell you what can be there or what can't be there. Einstein said imagination is greater than knowledge. And he said if you want your children to have a great imagination, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be even smarter, read them more fairy tales. That's why I've written 5 children's books with that very idea in mind. The second thing is that you have to learn to live from the end. Whatever you have placed into your imagination, you have to act as if it already were your reality, independent of what anything or anyone else says. When I was told that I had this diagnosis of leukemia, I can't tell you how many people sent me condolence letters and sent me information about this disease and how it was incurable and unfortunately this. And fortunately, I was given by my children a wonderful gift. It's called an iPad. And it's got this wonderful feature in it. It's called Delete. And then there's another feature of it. It's called Trash, which is really great. I'd like to have a button like that on me at any time, so that anytime anybody brings any information to you, you just push the trash button. The third of these principles is the principle of, I call it assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You must be able to feel it, because every time that you feel something within your body, you give a instruction to your subconscious mind. And your subconscious mind is the part of you where you do all of your living. You want to redo your subconscious mind. Now, tonight, I'm going to give you guys such a gift. Tonight, and every night for the rest of your life, I want you to take the last 5 minutes before you go off to sleep and realize that you are about to program your subconscious mind. And then when you awaken, you will rejoin the universal subconscious mind, the mind of God,
from which we all originate. We're all just individualized personal expressions of that one thing that we call the Tao, or God, or divine mind, or soul, or spirit. But the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. So you want to be real careful about how you program your subconscious mind. This is from the book of Job. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls upon men, while slumbering on their beds, then he opens the ears of men and seals their instruction. Job 33, 15 and 16. When you are slumbering on your bed, he opens your ears and seals your instruction. What you place into your subconscious mind as you are about to go into this deep slumber is all dependent upon what you do the last 3 or 4 or 5 minutes before you go off to sleep. You want to place into your imagination whatever you have placed into the I am that I spoke about earlier. I am well. I am content. I am peaceful. I am happy. I am prosperous. I am abundant. I am health. I am perfect health. I am healing. I am content. I am wealthy. I am positive. I am love. I am God. Even if you don't believe it, over and over again, use these words, I am. The words that God spoke to Moses. My name is I am, and that shall be my name for all future generations. And as you marinate in that, when you awaken, you will begin to attract more of what you have placed into your subconscious mind. That's why Serena said in here, the word blame is just not a word that we use. We are responsible for what we attract into our lives, and through our thoughts and our desires, we can create them. Begin to practice. I am living as if what you would like to attract is already an accomplished fact. English poet and dramatist of the Elizabethan and early Jacobean period, William Shakespeare is the most widely known author in all of English literature. To read William Shakespeare is to become lost in his unprecedentedly rich and inventive use of the English language. I decided to present this selection on the quality of mercy from The Merchant of Venice because I feel these are the most profound and practical 14 lines ever written on this human attribute. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above this sceptered sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself. And earthly power doth then show like as God's, when mercy seasons justice. Living with a spirit of mercy and putting it to use each day is the way to tame our more base and primitive instincts while nurturing love and compassion. When we are hurt by others, our first impulse is usually to get even. Revenge rather than mercy is what our more savage side urges. Yet Shakespeare defines this quality of mercy, which he equates as an attribute of God. As it droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath, it is twice blessed. The first blessing of mercy or compassion is on you, the giver. This message summarizes much of the wisdom that the psychological literature has to offer. That is, be compassionate with yourself. Do not judge yourself harshly when you make a mistake or fail to live up to some standard. Be of such a mind that you can detach from the misconduct or failure and be gentle and loving with yourself. Forgive yourself for being so human as to have wandered around in your darker corners and emerged embarrassed or disappointed with your behavior. Give yourself mercy, a quality that Shakespeare says becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. And so it becomes you as well. When you take the first blessing of mercy and apply it to yourself, you then open to this potential of offering this quality to him that takes. If you are unable to give yourself authentic compassion, you will never be able to give it to another, any more than you can give love to another if you do not love yourself, or give money to the poor if you have none. This notion of giving mercy away is applicable in all of your relationships, in all areas of your life. Offering compassion to those who have harmed or disappointed you is not a case for being a victim. It is instead a way of saying, I understand, I care, I forgive, but I still do not like it, and I will not tolerate being treated this way or having you think it is acceptable. The difference is not needing to exact revenge or to prove one's superiority. With mercy in your heart, you will find yourself much less distracted and disheartened by the evil behaviors that you see and read about almost every day. You will be able to send the offenders love and not become obsessed with anger, hatred, and eventually the desire for revenge. Put the ideas of this passage by one of the world's greatest wordsmiths into your life by practicing the following. 1. Give yourself the compassion you deserve for any and all past actions. Stop judging yourself so harshly. All of those errors and wrong actions were necessary for you to get beyond that place in your life. Be kind to yourself and eliminate any ill feelings you harbor toward yourself. 2. Once you have stated how you feel and justice has been seen, then let go. Let go now. Don't hold on to grudges and use constant reminders to keep others in a state of guilt while maintaining your own dissonance as well. Let it go. And 3, turn your most troublesome disturbances over to God. Simply say, Dear God, I find it so extremely difficult to give mercy in this situation, and I'm turning it over to you completely. I know you will guide me in acting in the most merciful and humane way. This action will free you from your own immobilization and anger and help you to see the saint in the sinner who have just been exchanging notes with each other. American poet, essayist, and philosopher known for challenging traditional thought, Emerson's philosophy is characterized by its reliance on intuition as the way to comprehend reality. Listen to this excerpt from SelfReliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. These are the voices which we hear in solitude, but they grow faint and inaudible as we enter into the world. Society everywhere is in conspiracy against the manhood of every one of its members. Society is a joint stock company in which the members agree, for the better securing of his bread, to each shareholder, to surrender the liberty and culture of the eater. The virtue in most request is conformity. Self-reliance is its aversion. It loves not realities and creators, but names and customs. Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. He who would gather immortal palms must not be hindered by the name of goodness, but must explore if it be goodness. Nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. The ideas of this one essay, Self-Reliance, have influenced all of my writing, and I consider Emerson to be one of my greatest teachers, even though he passed on well over a century ago. Ralph Waldo Emerson was known as much for his essays as his poetry. In perhaps his best-known and most frequently quoted essay titled Self-Reliance, this provocative American author, known as the father of the Transcendentalist movement, outlined in depth the basic tenets of what it means to be your own person. I can still remember the impact this essay, Self-Reliance, and its contemporary Henry David Thoreau's essay on the necessity of civil disobedience had on me when I was a 17-year-old high school student. In this brief excerpt, Emerson speaks to the necessity of being a nonconformist in order to be fully alive, and of the need to resist enculturation. Society demands conformity at the expense of individual liberty, he asserts, which is to say that it demands that you fit in or be an outcast. Emerson insists on the integrity of the individual mind, maintaining that it is essentially sacred. Now remember that Emerson was also a minister who is informing us that the mind is what is sacred, not the rules, not the laws, not the societal mores, but your mind. Further on in Self-Reliance, Emerson declares, "No law can be sacred to me but that of my nature." This profoundly courageous statement is from a fearless man who knew that divinity and sacredness are not in the institutions of the church but in the minds of individuals. Our conduct makes us divine creatures, not our memberships. How we use our minds as free-thinking people is what makes us sacred, not how well we cite the laws to protect our malice or vanity. When you stop to consider most of the evils that have been perpetrated on humanity, They have virtually all been accomplished under the protective custody of society's laws. Socrates was murdered because the law said it was proper to dispose of intellectual dissidents. St. Joan was burned at the stake because it was the law. All of the male babies in an entire country were systematically murdered because it was the rule. When my own mother was born, 1/2 of the population, that is 100% of the women, could not vote in America because the rules said so. At the time I was born, millions of people were being herded into death camps and all of their possessions confiscated because of inhumane laws. It was the law that required black people to sit in the rear of buses, drink at separate drinking fountains, and live lives of separate and inferior opportunity. So please don't cite the laws and rules of society to justify your actions. People who truly understand what is meant by self-reliance know they must live their lives by ethics rather than rules. It is possible to find some obscure law or rule or societal tradition to justify virtually anything. Those who do not give priority to the integrity of their own mind will indeed cite laws to explain why they do what they do. Aspiring to be a more sacred being means shedding your reliance on conformity. Emerson went on further in this provocative essay to say, "I am ashamed to think how easily we capitulate to badges and names, to large societies and dead institutions." He spoke openly of the long-held but immoral institution of slavery, which was protected by law. "I ought to go upright and vital and speak the rude truth in all ways. If malice and vanity wear the coat of philanthropy, shall that pass?" Recall, if you will, that Emerson was speaking and writing like this while slavery was legal and protected by society. What does this essay on self-reliance say to us today? It encourages us to cultivate ethics rather than rules or laws as the governing inner light for ourselves. If we know it is right, it will be in harmony with spiritual principles, many of which have been spoken about in this collection. Not thinking like the herd or citing its rules as your rationale for your own inner truth. Emerson does not ask you to deliberately disobey any law, rather to use your own sense of ethics in running your life. He makes it clear, to be a man or a woman, you must be a nonconformist. I suggest that the best way to employ this profound truth from Emerson is to learn how to be quietly effective in your own life. That is, have no need to make public pronouncements about how you refuse to conform, and instead take solace in the comfort of your own inner strength, and proceed as a silent individual who knows how to rely on yourself.
I've written 42 books. I've been doing it since I was 15 years old. I wrote a novel when I was just in high school called The Anomalous Compatriot, which was horrible. Never published, but a part of what I can see clearly now is a reflection of that. If you want to be a writer, it's something that's in your soul. I call it writing from the soul. Listening to that thing inside of you. In fact, the very last paragraph of this book says, "In order to access guidance, I encourage you to make a commitment to be absolutely faithful to that which exists nowhere else but within yourself. This is the great secret for seeing ever more clearly and living your life from a place of passion and purpose. That there is a place that exists only within you, and to be faithful to that." So I have been doing that since I was 15 years of age, and been writing and writing and writing and taking on the task of writing. I write by hand. I don't use a machine. I put the pad of paper here, I put my left hand on the table, and with my purple pen I write, and I allow for me it's like a circuit, and I allow it to flow through my heart and onto the page. And very often it takes 600, 700, 800 individual pages that you have to fill from in here or from out there, and you just have, you're really like a channel. Very much like what's happening right now. Even these words that are coming out of my mouth, I don't own them. I don't even know where they're coming from. But I just listen, and I just allow it, and then I'm done with it.
I give it to my editor, who incarnated here to be an editor. And I came here to be a writer and a speaker. And it's what my heart tells me to do. It's why I'm here this morning. So the idea of sitting down and writing another book it bears heavy on my soul. It's just exhausting. And it requires an enormous amount of discipline to sit there day in and day out. Because every book of every word that I've written in every book is something that has all come from me. I don't have anybody else to co-author with. I don't have anybody else that I assign to write it for me. It's all something that I take very personally and it's very important and significant to me. But it's also just so exhausting, and it just takes so much. And I was 72 years old then, and I just said, that's enough. And I told everybody, I'm not going to write any more books. I'm just done with that. And so I'm going to use my time to do some other things, which I'm really excited about. Some films, and other projects that I don't even want to talk about yet. So that was the 26th of June. On the morning of the 27th of June, I started writing I Can See Clearly Now. And I wrote, and I wrote, I wrote and wrote. I wrote every single day. Now the children were all there. They're filling up my space there. In fact, they filled that up so much, we were all going to just kind of gather together because it's summertime, and you can sleep on air mattresses and sleep on the couches and so on, and just everybody's just all there, and it's just a great time for everybody to be together. I had to go out and actually rent a place in order to have the privacy to do the writing that was just so filling my soul. It was so significant that in one moment I had shifted away from, and I thought that I was in charge of this. 11 or 12 years ago, I was in New York City, and I was being interviewed by the New York Times, and also there was a man who was also being interviewed by the New York Times. His name is Arthur Miller, the great American playwright. So he was asked the question, as I was sitting there waiting, he was asked the question, are you working on another play? Now at that time, Arthur Miller was 91 years old. So when the interviewer said, are you working on another play? His response was something that I've never forgotten. He said, I don't know, but I probably am. And that just resonated so deeply within me that there is something invisible that is directing this play that we call our life. And our human personality isn't the thing that's in charge of it at all. And when you begin to surrender to that, and when you begin to understand that, and when you begin to live from that place where you're surrendering to it and just allowing.
You are not a human being having a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. This really means that you are eternal, that your essence of who you are is something that can never be taken away. Your life here is a parenthesis in eternity. It opens parentheses at a given moment, called your conception. It closes parentheses at the instant of your death, and it's surrounded by eternity. You are that eternal being. Keep this in mind. It's a very, very important idea. You're not a human being having a spiritual experience. You're a spiritual being having a human experience. What you think about expands. If your thoughts are centered on what's missing, then what's missing, by definition, will have to expand. Nothing you imagine in your mind is impossible. Perhaps you'll be surprised to learn that there's no such thing as a nervous breakdown. Nerves don't break down. People choose to break down. Having a plan is not necessarily unhealthy, but falling in love with the plan is a real neurosis. Don't let your plan become bigger than you are. Planning for the future, having goals, looking towards a better life, these are all terrific. But remember that life is really what happens to you while you're making other plans. Enjoy today. Have your plans, but don't fall in love with the plan. Let that plan be something that is adjustable and that can shift at any moment. We can only give away to others what we have inside ourselves. We can only give away to others what we have inside ourselves. And the corollary of that is, we can't give away what we don't have. If you have love inside of you, love for yourself, then that's what you'll give away. If you have contempt inside of you, contempt for yourself, then that's what you'll give away. Be willing to let anything happen. Willingness is such an important commodity in our lives. Just be willing. Forgiveness is an act of self-love. Forgiveness is an act of self-love. You know, no one has ever died from a snake bite. Snakes bite. What kills people from a snake bite is not the bite, but the venom that continues to pour through the system long after the bite. You can't be unbitten, but you don't have to choose to have venom flowing through you. When you rid yourself of the venom and forgive, you're truly acting as a loving soul. If you step back far enough, it is easy to see humanity as one. Remember, this is a universe. One. Verse, song. Universe. One song. Step back and see us all as one. All of your behavior results from the thoughts that precede it. It is much easier not to smoke or eat chocolate than to do so. It is your mind that convinces you otherwise. It really is easier to not smoke or to not be addictive. Easier. If you're going to smoke or if you're going to be overweight, you have to do an awful lot of things. You have to go out to the store, you have to buy cigarettes, you have to take the cigarette package out of your pocket, you have to unwrap it, you have to carry fire in your pocket, you have to constantly be replacing them, you have to spend your money. There's a lot of things that you have to do if you're going to smoke. If you're not going to smoke, all you have to do is not smoke. So don't fool yourself and convince yourself that it's easier to smoke. It's much easier not to. Anything you must have comes to own you. Ironically, when you release it, you start getting more of it.
Pythagoras once wrote, "Learn to be silent. Let your quiet mind listen and absorb." And during the 1600s, Blaise Pascal wrote these words, "All man's miseries derive from not being able to sit quietly in a room, alone." This is the only piece in this collection of great contributors in which I have elected to highlight two writers on the same subject. I've selected two men whose lives were separated by over 2 millennia, both of whom in their own times were considered to be the most knowledgeable in the rational fields of mathematics and science. Pythagoras, whose writings influenced the thought of Plato and Aristotle, was a major contributor to the development of both mathematics and Western rational philosophy. Blaise Pascal, a famous French mathematician, physicist, and religious philosopher who lived 22 centuries after Pythagoras, is considered to be one of the original scientific minds. He is responsible for inventing the syringe, the hydraulic press, and the first digital calculator. Keeping in mind the left-brain scientific leanings of these two scientists, listen again to their two quotes. Pascal, all man's miseries derive from not being able to sit quietly in a room, alone. Pythagoras, learn to be silent. Let your quiet mind listen and absorb. They both speak to the importance of silence and the value of meditation in your life, whether you are an accountant or an avatar. They send us a valuable message about a way of being in life that is not popularly encouraged in our culture. This is that there is tremendous value in creating alone time in your life that is spent in silence. If you want to shed your miseries, learn to silently sit in a room alone and meditate. It has been estimated that the average person has 60,000 separate thoughts each and every day. The problem with this is that we have the same 60,000 thoughts today that we had yesterday, and will repeat them again tomorrow. Learning to be quiet and meditate involves figuring out a way to enter the spaces between your thoughts, or the gap, as I call it. In this silent, empty space between your thoughts, you can find a sense of total peace in a realm that is ordinarily unknowable. Here, any illusion of your separateness is shattered. Most of us have minds that race full speed day and night. Our thoughts are a hodgepodge of continuous dialogue about schedules, money worries, sexual fantasies, grocery lists, drapery problems, concerns about the children, vacation plans, and on like a merry-go-round that never stops. Those 60,000 thoughts are usually about ordinary daily activities and create a mental pattern which leaves no space for silence. This pattern reinforces our cultural belief that all gaps in conversation need to be filled quickly. For many, silence represents an embarrassment and a social defect. Therefore, we learn to jump in to fill these spaces, regardless of whether our filler has any substance or not. Silent periods in a car or at a dinner are perceived as awkward moments, and good conversationalists know how to get those spaces occupied with some kind of noise. And so it is with ourselves as well. We have no training in silence, and we see it as unwieldy and confusing. Thus we keep the inner dialogue going just like the outer. Yet it is in that silent place where our ancient teacher Pythagoras tells us to let our quiet mind listen and absorb, that confusion will disappear and enlightened guidance will come to us. But meditation also affects the quality of our non-silent activities. The daily practice of meditation is the one single thing in my life that gives me a greater sense of well-being, increased energy, higher productivity, at a more conscious level, more satisfying relationships, and a closer connection to God. The mind is like a pond. On the surface you see all of the disturbances, yet the surface is only a fraction of the pond. It is in the depth below the surface, where there is stillness, that you will come to know the true essence of the pond, as well as your own mind. By going below the surface, you come to the spaces between your thoughts, where you are able to enter the gap. The gap is total emptiness, or silence. These two pioneering scientists, who are still quoted today in university courses, were studying the nature of the universe. They struggled with the mysteries of energy and pressure and mathematics and space and time and universal truth. Their message to all of us here is quite simple. If you want to understand the universe, or your own personal universe, then be quiet and face your fear of sitting in a room alone and going deep within the layers of your own mind. It is the space between the notes that makes the music. Without that emptiness, that silence in between, there is no music, only a noise. You too are silent, empty space at your center, surrounded by form. To break through that form and discover your very creative nature that is in the center, you must take the time to become silent each day and enter that rapturous space between your thoughts. No amount of my talking about the value of daily meditation will ever convince you. You will never know the value of this practice unless you make the commitment to do it.